"I'm sorry, General, but the humans are simply too dangerous to be deployed on a mixed-species battlefield." The silence in the War Council chamber was the kind that made even seasoned officers shift uncomfortably. General Kath, Supreme Commander of the Galactic Concorde's ground forces, stared at the trembling Zari scientist in front of him, then let his gaze sweep across the gathered officials. Battle-hardened strategists, grizzled commanders, and high-ranking diplomats, all of them looking uncertain. "They have some of the best combat records in the Concorde," Korth said, his voice steady. "You expect me to remove them from our forces based on what exactly?" The scientist, a nervous-looking Zari with quivering mandibles, tapped furiously at his datapad. "We conducted extensive studies on their reflexes. What we discovered is alarming." An Anari admiral rumbled in frustration. "They react quickly. We knew this. Humans are fast, aggressive, and adaptable. What's new?" The Zari took a deep breath, his mandibles clicking. "Sir, human combat reflexes don't follow standard biological principles. Most species train for decades to achieve reaction speeds that barely approach what humans seem to develop naturally. They are not simply fast. Their instincts are unpredictable, illogical, and frankly borderline suicidal." Korth's fingers drummed against the metal table. "You'll need to explain." The scientist exhaled, pulling up footage on the chamber's central holographic display. "Observe." A battle replay flickered into view. A human marine, helmet cracked and weapon low on energy, sprinted through a war zone. An enemy sniper's laser bolt streaked toward him, moving at hypersonic velocity. The Marine shouldn't have seen it. He shouldn't have been able to react, but he did. Without pausing, the human dropped into a slide, the beam missing his head by millimeters. As he slid across the battlefield, he somehow had the presence of mind to toss his sidearm upward. The moment his body came to a stop, he caught the weapon and fired a single shot. The sniper, hidden behind partial cover, crumpled. The footage froze. The chamber was silent again. "This is but one example," the Zari whispered. "It is not luck. It is not training. It is an instinctual defiance of probability itself." The Anari admiral folded his arms. "It was impressive, but I failed to see the problem." The Zari twitched. "The problem is that they don't just react. They act before their brains should logically process the situation. Their actions appear reckless, but somehow, impossibly, they are correct. Watch this next one." Another clip played. A squad of soldiers, including one human, was pinned down by incoming fire. The alien troops hesitated, calculating their options, but the human was already moving. He didn't wait. He seized a piece of wreckage, hurled it at an enemy position, and charged forward, forcing the others to follow. The distraction worked. The enemy was caught off guard. "They do not pause," the scientist murmured. "They do not hesitate. Where other species process, humans move. Their bodies react before their minds fully comprehend the situation. And yet, time and time again, they are right." The display shut off. General Kath leaned forward. "So you're telling me they're too effective?" The scientist made an odd clicking noise. "I am saying that their combat instincts are terrifying. They do things no trained soldier should even attempt, and they do it without conscious thought. We tested them in simulations and the results were alarming." Korth's expression remained neutral. "Explain." The Zari scientist hesitated, then sighed. "In a controlled test, we placed human recruits in a simulated kill house alongside members of other species. We rigged the simulation with a hidden hostile, a synthetic combatant designed to attack from an unpredictable angle. It was programmed to be undetectable until it fired." He paused. "Humans detected it anyway, not visually, not through heat signatures. They reacted to something, A flicker in the shadows, a shift in air currents. Their subconscious minds triggered action before any alert was given. They didn't just evade, they counterattacked perfectly before their conscious minds even understood why. The chamber was dead silent. Korth steepled his fingers. "Are you suggesting humans have precognition?" The scientist shook his head. "No, at least not in the way we understand it. Their brains process sensory input in a way we cannot replicate. Their reflexes operate on a level that borders on the absurd. This is not simple speed. It is an ability to act before conscious analysis. We still do not understand how." A reptilian strategist spoke up. "And why is this a problem?" The Zari hesitated. "Because they do not react in ways that make sense to other species. A Zari soldier expects his ally to move with calculated precision. A Karai warrior anticipates strategic timing. But humans, they dive into cover before a threat is fully identified. They fire at movement their conscious minds haven't yet processed. They trust an instinct that is entirely alien to us." The scientist exhaled. "We've already had incidents in joint training exercises. Other species cannot keep up with human unpredictability. They hesitate when a human moves without warning. They fail to understand how or why a human reacts before a threat is confirmed. This could lead to confusion in battle or worse, hesitation at critical moments." Korth sat back. "And your recommendation?" The Zari's mandibles twitched. "I strongly advise that humans fight in units composed only of their own kind. Mixed species squads will only create coordination issues. Their combat instincts are too different, too immediate. Other troops cannot function properly when they do not understand why their human ally is already moving before they've even recognized the threat." Kath let out a long breath, his gaze sweeping across the assembled officers. No one spoke. Finally, the Anathi admiral gave a low rumble of amusement. "So the problem with humans is that they are too good at war." The scientist shifted awkwardly. "In a way, yes." Korth tapped his fingers on the table. "I will take your findings into consideration." The Zari looked relieved, but Korth's mind was already elsewhere. The reports had only confirmed what he already knew. Humans were unnatural, not because they were reckless, not because they were strong, but because somehow, impossibly, they moved like war itself was burned into their very bones. Captain Drenner watched the humans with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. It had been 3 cycles since the Galactic Concord approved the formation of an all-human strike force, and he had been assigned as the liaison officer to observe them in the field. The mission was simple: secure an abandoned mining outpost before enemy forces could establish a foothold. A standard operation, one the Concord's forces had executed countless times before. Except this time, humans were involved. Drenner adjusted his helmet as the dropship doors opened, revealing the barren wasteland below. The human soldiers leapt from the craft before it had fully landed, rolling into cover with an ease that suggested they had done this 1,000 times before. "Command, this is Fire Team Alpha. Landing complete. Proceeding to sweep the perimeter." The human commander, Lieutenant Briggs, spoke calmly over the comms. No wasted words, no hesitation. Drenner followed as the team moved forward. He had read the reports, he had studied the analysis, but nothing had truly prepared him for what it was like to see them in action firsthand. They didn't operate like Concord troops. There was no rigid formation, no deliberate coordination that required constant verbal confirmation. Instead, they moved in an unspoken rhythm, adjusting their positioning with a level of trust he had never seen before. Briggs raised a fist, and the squad froze. Drenner saw nothing, heard nothing. Then, in an instant, the humans moved. One broke left, another vaulted over debris, while 2 more split in opposite directions. Before Drenner could even register what was happening, a burst of enemy fire illuminated the area they had just occupied. The humans had reacted before the attack had even begun. Gunfire erupted. The enemy had been waiting in ambush, but the humans had already countered it before the trap could be fully sprung. They didn't hesitate. They didn't falter. Every movement was precise. Every reaction perfectly timed. Drenner barely had time to process it before Briggs barked another order. Push forward. Keep pressure on them. The humans advanced aggressively. No fear, no second-guessing. Drenner saw a human soldier dive behind cover just as a plasma bolt tore through the space he had occupied a fraction of a second earlier. Another human executed a flawless combat roll, firing mid-motion to take down an enemy that had barely emerged from cover. It wasn't normal. Drenner had fought alongside countless species, even the fastest, most well-trained soldiers, and they required time to react, to process information, to make decisions. Humans didn't. They reacted before the mind could even fully register the danger, and they were winning because of it. Within minutes, the enemy position was overwhelmed. The remaining hostiles broke and fled, unable to withstand the sheer ferocity of the attack. The humans didn't pursue. They didn't waste energy celebrating. They simply regrouped, reloaded, and pressed forward. Drenner took a deep breath, glancing at Briggs. "How did you know?" he asked. Briggs gave him a sidelong look. "Know what? That they were waiting in ambush?" Briggs shrugged. "Didn't." Drenner frowned. "Then how?" "Felt wrong," Briggs said simply. "Too quiet, too convenient. Figured if I was setting an ambush, that's where I'd do it." Drenner opened his mouth, then closed it. They didn't think like other species. Their instincts operated on an entirely different level. They acted first, processed later, and somehow, impossibly, they were always right. They reached the outpost's main structure, securing the entrance in record time. The humans moved with unwavering precision, scanning every corner, clearing every room with an efficiency that was difficult to comprehend. Drenner activated his comms. "Command, we've secured the structure. No casualties." A pause, then a reply. "Understood, Captain. Hold position and prepare for counter-offensive. Enemy reinforcements inbound." Drenner exhaled slowly. "Copy that." Briggs nodded, already relaying orders. The humans adjusted their positions without needing further instruction. They weren't just reacting. They were already preparing for the next phase of the battle. Drenner found himself watching them closely. There was no fear in their movements, no hesitation. He had always believed that war was a matter of strategy, of calculation. But the humans had shown him something different. For them, war wasn't just a discipline, it was instinct. The first explosion rocked the outpost before Drenner even heard the warning over comms. Dust and debris rained down from the ceiling as the humans scrambled into action. "Contact! Southeast Ridge!" a Marine shouted. Briggs was already moving, barking orders as the humans repositioned. They weren't flustered. They weren't panicked. They had been expecting this. Drenner pressed himself against cover, his hands gripping his weapon. The enemy had brought reinforcements, and from the sound of it, they had numbers. A lesser force would have bunkered down, played defensively. The humans didn't. They pushed. "Briggs, you're splitting your forces in an entrenched defense," Drenner called. Briggs didn't glance at him. "We're not defending. We're countering." Drenner wanted to argue. The enemy had them outnumbered. But the humans weren't playing defense. A soldier sprinted out of cover, moving in an erratic pattern, drawing enemy fire. Another two surged forward, diving through gaps in the structure, already firing before their feet had even landed. A reptilian officer on comm sounded confused. "Your troops are advancing under heavy fire. They're moving." Briggs corrected him. "We don't wait to be cornered." Drenner risked a glance over cover. The humans weren't just responding. They were maneuvering, shifting constantly, making themselves impossible to pin down. The enemy had no idea how to respond to such an unpredictable assault, and then, in an instant, it was over. The last of the enemy forces was either dead or fleeing, and the human squad had already moved on to secure the perimeter. Drenner stood there, stunned. He had never seen anything like it. The humans didn't just fight. They acted. They didn't need plans. They didn't need coordination. They had their instincts, and those instincts, no matter how reckless they seemed, always brought them victory.